What is end-of-life organizing and how does it work? We're going to talk about that today. Hi there, I'm Angela Brown, and this is Ask a House Cleaner. This is a show where you get to ask a house cleaning question, and I get to help you find an answer. Now, today's show is brought to us by mycleaningconnection.com. This is a hub that has podcasts and books and products and all kinds of resources for you to get organized and to clean your home. So check it out at mycleaningconnection.com. All right, today's show is a very special show, and it's one that is very near and dear to my heart because it's about end-of-life organizing. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to die, but my dad and my father-in-law have almost died this year, so it's been a really rough year. But both of them, and they're both still alive, praise the Lord, but as they both sat on their deathbeds, they both looked back on their life and they were like, wait a second, we're not quite ready to die. Now, my father-in-law lives in a 2-story home, and he can no longer get up and down the stairs. And a long time ago, they should have moved into a flat house that doesn't require getting up and down the stairs. They should have downsized and got rid of a lot of their stuff. My dad, on the other hand, has lots of plants, and the plants require weeding, watering, lots of care. And it's not just house plants, but he has a greenhouse, and he has gardens and orchards and property and all this stuff with lots of plants. It would kind of be the equivalent of hoarding plants, but they're all for good purposes, and he's fed families and been very self-sufficient and all these things. But it's a lot of work for the people that still live at home. And so if he were to move on to another dimension, it would be kind if he would downsize his plants so there's not so much maintenance and so much care for the people left behind. So today we reached out to an amazing person who is the host of a podcast that I'm a huge fan of called Hoardganize. And this is Rachel Seavey. She's a professional organizer in the San Francisco Bay Area, and she has a specialty in end-of-life organizing. So we've welcomed her on our show today and asked her to share with us some insights into what do you do as you're approaching the end of your life, and how do you kind of bridge the gap between what you know you should do and what you still have the energy and are able to do. Please help me welcome Rachel Seavey.
Well, thank you for having me on the show, Angela. It's an excellent topic. It's something that I deal with a lot in the field. I work with a lot of senior citizens, so sometimes it's a harder topic to have. The closer, I guess, you get to knowing when your end of life is going to be, I believe that there's a little bit more urgency. And I do have some tips that would be helpful for people without sounding too grim or depressing or morbid. We just all have to face these thoughts. So I usually suggest that people really be realistic and who's going to clean up your house after you're gone? Is it going to be your grandkids? Is it going to be your siblings, your spouse? And think about what kind of legacy that you want to leave to the people that are going to end up cleaning your house. And a lot of people don't think about this, and also asking for help is something that can be humbling and uncomfortable, but you really should start thinking about who is going to be left to clean up the mess and what they're going to think about you and about your stuff when you're gone. A lot of the times I work with family members once the person has already gone, and it's so overwhelming for people. I mean, there's stuff everywhere. And if there were any treasures left behind, they're really hard to find. And if there were any special intentions or anything that people might specifically want to leave to specific people, if they haven't made that clear to people, it's really hard to maneuver through all the clutter and find things, especially if things are hidden, if you're hiding jewelry for your granddaughter or things of that sort. Sometimes people aren't even able to find it, or sometimes we find it and people don't want it. That's another thing that's pretty common and kind of hard for people to digest. But I know that in their generation, these kinds of items, crystal and china and beautiful antique furniture, there's an era where everybody wanted that stuff, and people had homes that were big enough to store that kind of stuff, and people really enjoyed that kind of stuff. But Nowadays, a lot of the kids, a lot of the grandkids, they don't even want any of that stuff. And so I definitely have my senior clients reach out, before they die and offer any kind of treasures or anything that's important to them, to family and to friends, to alleviate themselves of that clutter and to also see if the person wants it or not. It's unbelievable how many things people don't want. And it's nice to know that before you die instead of hanging on to all of this stuff, to be able to say, hey, well, no one wants it. Who does? And maybe find a charity or a family that does appreciate that kind of stuff rather than just waiting until you die and then people feel overwhelmed with all the stuff that they're inheriting.
We had a friend that just passed away and left a bunch of stuff to her kids. And so her kids were fighting over the stuff about who wanted it and who felt obligated to keep it. And they knew that there were things that were important to their mom that weren't important to any of them. And then they felt this sense of guilt and shame and obligation for admitting that, well, I don't want it, you can have it. Well, no, one of us should keep it. And having this sense of we should keep it because it was mom's.
Oh yeah, and there's usually somebody, it's usually the person I end up working with that keeps it. And they say, "I can't believe they didn't keep, all of mom's Christmas cards or things that are just, not very useful." And you feel guilty about it, but that's very common. As, there are definitely treasures that people will argue over, but then there's those items that it's like, what do you do with them? They're relatives' items. They were important to them, but not necessarily to you. You feel guilty, it might end up in your garage for a while before you're able to let it go, but it is a real thing.
And would you say that there's a perfect age where you should start thinking about downsizing and getting rid of some of your stuff, even if you haven't had a near death experience, where it's just kind of like, all right, now's a good time before you get too old to be able to actually go through all your stuff and manage it and move stuff around?
Yeah, and that's a great point because a lot of people wait until too long and they're not able to manage that stuff. I suggest retirement, it's a great time if, 60, 65. A lot of people are still in relatively good shape. They're excited to not have to go to work every day. And so that's a great time to dedicate, one day a week or a couple of days a month to just letting stuff go and have fun. Ask your daughter, ask your granddaughters if they want any of your stuff or any of your grandkids, and start moving stuff out of there and learning what people do like, and maybe saving and taking really good care of the stuff you will leave people when you're gone, and making it very clear. A lot of people don't make it very clear, and then so people are fighting over items, and then so just being really responsible with your items before you leave, I would be a great suggestion. But definitely starting at retirement or even beforehand, if you find some time, or empty nesting is even a good time to start. Your kids are out of there, get their stuff out of there, tell them to come get their stuff out of the garage. And it's a different life stage, and so you really want to honor your different life stages now that you're a parent without kids in the house, now that you're retired, now that you're been married for 45 years, whatever it is. I think it's a really good time to start looking at your life stage and thinking if you really need all that stuff at this point in your life.
Well, those are some excellent tips. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us today. In closing, will you share with our audience how they can listen to your podcast? Because it is a dynamic podcast called Hoardganize. And I've loved the podcast for years. I know it's up on our My Cleaning Connection page as a resource for recommended podcasts. And it's been there for a couple of years. This is a fantastic podcast. Will you share with us a little bit about that and where our listeners can listen to that?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much. The podcast is specifically for people that are overwhelmed with clutter. It could be a little bit of clutter, and it could be your entire house is full of stuff. It's really tailored for people that might not be able to afford a professional organizer or might not be ready for a professional organizer, but definitely want to learn some tools and some skills that they can use in their house. You can find the podcast on iTunes and on Google Play and on iHeartRadio. It's Hoardganize, kind of like hoarding and organizing together. hoardganize.com. And I've been recording now again every Sunday night at 6.
And tell us a little bit about where our listeners can find you if they're in the San Francisco Bay Area and they want to hire you for your organizing special.
Okay, great. I am the owner of Collector Care Professional Organizers, and we're based in the San Francisco Bay Area. The website there is www.collectorcare.com, and we have a wonderful team of organizers, cleaners, and haulers that can help from start to finish on any kind of organizing project.
Alrighty, and that was Rachel Seavey, owner of Collector Care and the host of the Hoardganize Podcast. I'm going to leave links in the show notes so you guys can get in touch with her, also so that you can check out her podcast and you can become more familiar with a lot of the tips and the strategies that she suggests and that she offers. Great information, and I'm a huge fan, have been for a very long time. So thank you, Rachel, for joining us today. Please pass this on to a friend if you found this helpful. If we've earned your subscription, please subscribe. And until we meet again, leave the world a cleaner place than when you found it.